It was a few months after I started high school, and I was trying to keep in contact with my friends from middle school, especially my one friend that we call Winter. I've never talked to Winter over the phone, but I've always texted her. I stupidly didn't save her number, but she was the only one that texted me at that time. I remember her number ended with 86. So, one night, my family was in the process of moving home so I could be closer to school. I got a text from Winter asking how I was doing. I carried on with normal conversation for a very long time. I didn't think much of it since the number had 86 at the end. One thing that threw me off was that she was asking me to call her all the time. It was weird, but I never called her because I'm terrible over the phone. One day, I was at my mom's office, bored out of my mind. While I was texting Winter, she asked me to call her for the millionth time. I finally caved in and decided to call her because I had nothing else better to do. This is where things get very weird. I call her, and a guy answers the phone. Thinking it might have been her older brother, I asked if Winter was there. He then asks, "Who's Winter?" Totally weirded out, I said, "Oops, wrong number," and hung up. Not even a minute later, I got a text saying, "No, you have the right number." A few seconds went by, and I got more texts, but I didn't answer the rest of the day. A few days later, I got a friend request from a guy I don't know on Facebook, who we'll call Dick. I looked to see if we had any mutual friends, and we had one in common, my friend that I'll call Don, and they went to the same school. I had just gotten into high school and wanted to make friends, so I accepted him. Again, not a minute later, I got a message from him asking why I ignored him. I told him that I didn't even know it was him and that I thought I had been texting my friend Winter the whole time since both their numbers had a 86 at the end. He blew it off and started texting and messaging me non-stop. He began telling me really weird things like, "You're beautiful," and "I love you so much," even though we didn't even really know each other. I remember changing my profile picture, and again, he didn't waste time telling me how adorable I am. Things got progressively more uncomfortable towards Valentine's Day. He kept asking if I wanted anything, and I kept telling him no. I guess he wasn't getting the message and kept saying things like, "You look sexy in this," followed by pictures of thongs and lingerie. When Valentine's Day finally came around, he said that I was his true love. I finally told him that I wasn't interested in him and that he needed to calm down with the pervy stuff. He was hurt, but it stopped at least for a little while. He then started texting me morning, noon, and night, and I would ignore him all the time, but he still wasn't getting the message that I didn't like him. Come April, my friend Mary, Don, and some of his friends from school decided to go see a movie together. I thought I was going to have fun. Well, I'm the first one to the movie theater at the mall, and my brother and dad decide to wait with me for my friends. I'm on the first floor and can see the elevator going up to the movie theater in plain sight. I turn around and look up, and there's Dick going up to the theater. He makes eye contact with me. He totally knew I would be here, and I never told him once about my plans. I became ultra paranoid and told my brother to come with me into Hot Topic just so I could be out of view from him. We looked around for a bit, and I saw Dick listening to music in the store. The guy will not quit, so my brother and I left the store, and I told my dad. He said we should wait out in the car until my friends arrived. When we were in the car, I texted Don and angrily told him that Dick was there. At this point, Don knew how much I didn't like him, and he didn't like him either. I asked why he was there, and he said he might have said something about our plans, but he assured me he didn't invite him. So, Don, Mary, and Don's friend arrived at the same time, and I couldn't be more relieved. I walked into the mall with them and ignored Dick for the whole movie. Afterwards, he whined about how no one wanted to talk to him the whole time, and I said he shouldn't have come. Then Don laughed. The next day, I got a text from Dick whining about how it was really rude of me to ignore him, and I just went off on him. I said, "You were the one who wasn't invited and decided to come anyway. How do you think it makes me feel when I tell you countless times you make me uncomfortable and all of a sudden you just show up?" He then started blaming me for something that I don't remember. I blocked him, deleted his number, and anything I could do to make sure he wasn't able to have any contact with me. Fast forward to that summer after freshman year, I'm on vacation and I get a friend request from Dick. I freaked out because I thought I had deleted him, but it occurred to me that he might have made a different account, so I blocked that one too. Sophomore year, I got with my now boyfriend Bob. We were talking about weird stuff that happened to us, and I told him about this. Bob asked, "How did he get your number anyway?" That question made my skin crawl because it never occurred to me to ask Don if he handed it out, and I really don't think he would do that. So the question still remains, how did Dick, a guy I never met, get my number? During the fall 2018 semester, I was doing some online classes through a pretty prestigious college, but I knew that I would transfer to my hometown four-year university for the winter semester. I still wanted to make some new friends, though, so that I wouldn't feel alone. Maybe along the way, it would be nice to meet someone to date, which is what happened. I met this girl through Tinder. She was really cool and we had a lot in common. Long story short, we started dating and had a lot of fun together. She wasn't from my hometown, and I had noticed that after she came back from Thanksgiving break, her behavior and attitude had changed. She was always on the more sarcastic side, but now just seemed mean. For example, the playful teasing had become way more aggressive. There was no physical harm. I should say that it was just the kind of teasing that shouldn't be happening in a relationship. I just brushed it off as stress due to finals approaching. She eventually went back home for winter break. We always found ways to stay in touch every day, such as text, Snap, and occasional FaceTime once or twice a week. Once the winter semester started, I moved into an apartment because the dorms didn't seem that fun, and I had found something nice that was surprisingly cheap. Literally the night of the first day of classes, we decided to break up. Like I said, she was from a different state and was having a lot of trouble being away from home because she missed her family, friends, and pets a lot. Besides me and her roommate, who she didn't really get along with, she barely knew anybody in town. She was just such a shy person, and that's not a bad thing, but like I said, she didn't have a lot of friends to surround herself with, so she just wanted to be by herself all the time. So, it was a nice exit without having to be the one that did the dumping, because that kind of stuff just gives me too much stress and anxiety. A few weeks went by, and each day I felt a little less sad because when I looked back on the relationship, there were a bunch of issues that I had overlooked. It was the week leading up to Valentine's Day, and I was kind of sad because I had some fun things planned that I wanted to surprise my girlfriend with. I decided that maybe for that week, I would reactivate my Tinder account, really to see if I could get a match and possibly hang out with someone on the holiday so I wouldn't be alone, because most of my friends had their own boyfriends and girlfriends. I did so about 2 days before the holiday and got some matches after a few hours of having the app. I chatted with most of them and asked what their Valentine's Day plans were, and not to my surprise, they were all going out to bars. Personally, that lifestyle isn't really my thing, it just doesn't seem that fun to me. But I always use it as a last resort, and I wasn't that desperate yet. I eventually started texting with a girl named David who wasn't into that stuff either. She would rather stay in and watch movies, which is what I would rather be doing too. She even had the same major as one of my best friends and was taking some of the classes he was taking, but she didn't know if they had classes at the same time since they had just started and she was trying to figure out everyone's names. The best way to describe David is that she had shoulder-length blonde hair, cute glasses, freckles, and bright blue eyes. After texting for about an hour, I got her Snapchat and we moved the conversation there. I asked if she would want to hang out on Valentine's Day, and she was down. So, it was Valentine's Day 2018, which had fallen on the Thursday of the week. Luckily, I didn't have any Friday classes, and David said she would skip her Friday morning class so we wouldn't feel pressured to end the night so early. The first part of the night went pretty smooth. We got some McDonald's, saw a movie, and then walked around the downtown area for a while. To spare you the details, we eventually went back to my apartment and had sex. To be honest, everything went great. She asked if she could spend the night because it was snowing out and her place was about a 10-minute walk away. So, of course, I told her she could stay. We eventually fell asleep around 1 a.m. I'm a pretty light sleeper, especially when there's someone else in the bed with me. Around 3 a.m., David woke me up as she was getting out of the bed, but I didn't make her aware that she woke me up. It was pretty dark in the room, but I could see that she was walking towards the bathroom. She turned the light on and shut the door so that it wouldn't seep into the bedroom. I was very tired, so I just went back to sleep. I awoke again around 5:30 a.m., and to my surprise, David wasn't in the bed next to me. I turned to see if she was still in the bathroom, but I couldn't see the outline of the light, so that meant it was turned off. I wasn't in too much of a shock yet. I was just curious as to where she was. So, I sat up and grabbed my phone off my bedside table. I didn't have any text from her saying that she had left, but I was able to see that the clothes she'd been wearing earlier were still on the ground next to mine. So, she was still here somewhere. I then heard a creak come from the other side of the bedroom. I could see that David was just standing in the corner, back facing toward me. I was really freaked out. I quietly called out her name and asked if she was okay, but there was no response. I turned on the lamp I had on the bedside table. It didn't create too much light, but there was enough. I got out of bed and walked over to her. She was just standing there, not even moving. I was so creeped out but wanted to see what was going on. I gently placed my hand on her shoulder and said her name again. There was no response. There were 10 seconds of silence, and right as I was about to say her name one more time, she turned around at an inhuman speed and started screaming like a maniac and hitting me. It wasn't the hardest of hitting, but I'm kind of a skinny guy, so it hurt a bit. The scariest part is that there was no emotion on her face at all. I backed up and fell over onto my bed, and she followed me, still screaming and hitting me. After about 30 seconds of this happening, she ran over to her clothes, grabbed them, and ran out of my apartment. I got off the bed and ran to my front door, which was left wide open, and she was gone. I shut it and locked it. I then noticed there was a horrible smell coming from the bathroom. The door was shut, and when I opened it, the horrible stench came out. I turned on the light and found the room in a mess. The shower curtain was ripped off, my medicine bag had been thrown on the ground, and my floor was wet. The worst part was that she defecated and smeared it on the mirror. I called the police immediately, and they sent an officer to my place. They asked if they could see her Tinder and Snapchat profiles, but of course, both had been deleted. I only had one picture of her that she sent on Snapchat, and I had screenshotted it because it was a cute picture, but she was using a Snapchat filter in the picture. Sadly, there was not really much the police could do except take a report and keep an eye open for her in the area. They advised me to have a friend sleep over later that night in case she would try to break in, which is what I did. I called one of my best friends, John. He was the one who had the same major as David. He came over later that night, and I told him the whole story. One of the classes she said she was taking, that my friend was also taking, was a pretty small class that only met twice a week. I showed John the picture I had, and when I asked John if he knew her, he said he had never seen her in class. John and I watched a movie and fell asleep around 12 a.m. I awoke around 3 a.m. to find someone trying to open the front door from the other side. After letting it happen for about a minute, it then stopped. I walked over and looked out the peephole, but nobody was there. Nothing has happened since, but it still really freaks me out. This started when I was 14, female. Now I'm 21, and I just transferred to a new high school in the middle of the school year as a freshman with my twin sister. I was enrolled in a Spanish 2 class where I met Noah, and that was where the obsession began. When I started my class and met Noah, I initially thought he was attractive. He was tall, had brown hair, and beautiful eyes for a guy. But I did notice he was extremely shy. Noah was kind of awkward, but I made up excuses to talk to him, asking about the homework and engaging in other small talk. He seemed to appreciate it and asked if I wanted to walk around during lunch and talk, so I happily agreed. It was clear that Noah was not very confident and didn't know how to initiate conversation, so I often did most of the talking. I even asked him for his phone number. After a few days of texting and talking, I could tell he didn't have any friends. He was kind of negative and had a pessimistic view on life. It was rather draining and disappointing. The things he would say were kind of unsettling or just unusual for me. He would text me, fantasizing about being a superhero in a roleplay where I was the damsel in distress and he was always my savior. He also had an obsession with the killer from the Scream movies. Overall, he was a nice guy but different from what I was expecting or attracted to. As time passed and Valentine's Day approached, we were talking practically every day. He asked me to be his Valentine, and I agreed somewhat reluctantly. On Valentine's Day, he walked up to me and gave me a pack of Hershey's Kisses and some Twizzlers. I don't like Twizzlers, so I handed them back to him, gave him a kiss on the cheek, and went to my class. Yes, I know that was kind of a move, but I was honestly losing interest in him at that point. I had told him before that I didn't like candy like that. During the day, I received more gifts, flowers, and candy from other friends. I saw Noah and could tell he was extremely upset by this, but he didn't say anything. He texted me later in the day saying how stupid he felt and how he was outdone by everyone else. I didn't respond. Over the next few weeks, I gradually talked to him less and less. Class became awkward, and I could tell he wanted to say something to me but never did. I later learned from my twin sister that he asked her every single day about me, if I was talking to someone else, if I liked him, and how to win me over. He confided in her that he had never even talked to a girl before. At first, I thought it was sweet, but I still no longer had a romantic interest in him. We would talk at school sometimes, and he would bring me homemade cookies and walk me to the train station. He still texted and tried to call me in the evenings after school. By then, I was talking to someone new who eventually became my boyfriend for the rest of high school, Jason. When I started dating Jason, I knew that Noah was absolutely devastated. He then started telling people around school that I was his first kiss. I was confused because I didn't know a kiss on the cheek counted as that, but to each their own. It was somewhat upsetting because people were getting the impression that we dated or that I played him, which was not the case at all. I would still talk to Noah as a friend. He was in the same grade and classes as my new boyfriend. He would always tell me how he thought Jason didn't like him and that he felt Jason knew about us. I told Noah there was nothing to know about us because we were anything but friends. Jason was totally chill, non-confrontational, and definitely not the jealous type. As the school year was coming to an end, Noah came running up to me on the last day of school and handed me a 60 to 70 page notebook, wide-ruled if it makes a difference. It explained all the ways he was in love with me, how everybody at the school thinks poorly of me, and how he could treat me better. I read it once and showed it to my twin. She told me how weird and uncomfortable it made her, and we both agreed on that. I stashed it away and didn't speak of it to anyone else. I acted like nothing happened and still talked to him as a friend occasionally. I worked a lot in high school, spent time with my boyfriend and friends, and didn't think much about Noah. Time went on, and we eventually stopped talking completely. I saw him around school, and he was never really with anyone else. He was always alone, which I didn't find strange anymore considering how awkward and quiet he could be. Fast forward another year, I'm a junior, and Noah and Jason are both seniors getting ready to graduate. Noah texted me out of the blue one day and told me he had written a book. It would mean the world to him if I could be the first to read it and give him feedback. Being the person that I am, I agreed. So, he met up with me at school the next day and handed me a thick notebook. He told me to take my time reading it and to give him honest feedback when I finished. I read the story in 4 class periods. It was around 300 pages long. The story takes place in a Game of Thrones setting. The 3 main characters are Gary, which is Noah, Lily, me, and David, Jason. For the sake of confusion, I'll be referring to the characters by our real names. The only reason I know the characters were us is Noah's story was not fictional, it was based on us, as he had described the characters as literally identical to our physical appearances. In the story, Noah was the son of the king, while the rest of us were mere peasants. Despite this, Noah was always in love with me, though I was with Jason. It was the annual time when our kingdom would go to battle with another for honor and glory, gladiator style. Noah thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to prove himself and volunteered. The night before our kingdom traveled to the battle location, my character went to Noah in the middle of the night to express her love and fear. They ended up having very graphic sex, which was truly disturbing to read. The next day, after they arrived at the place of battle, my character went to his room again, where the same graphic encounter occurred. During this, Jason came looking for my character, and we were caught. My character told Noah that she didn't really love him and ran after Jason to apologize for being a harlot. Noah was absolutely devastated and ultimately let his opponent kill him in battle because he couldn't handle the loss of the love of his life. When our kingdom returned home, Jason sneaked through the window in the middle of the night and murdered me by slitting my throat. As you can imagine, I was horrified and creeped out. I threw the book away and never told Noah what I thought about it, but he must have known because he never asked for it back. Noah and Jason both graduated, and life went on. Noah didn't try to reach out to me for a few years until I was around 20. He messaged me on Instagram in the middle of the night, saying, "Show me your feet. Submit to daddy. I always looked at your feet at school and would fantasize about them, along with links to a few foot fetish websites." I promptly blocked him. The next day, he messaged me from another account, which was a foot fetish and bondage account that he ran. He asked me why I blocked him, but I just blocked him again. Earlier last year, on my new account, he messaged me again, calling me a bitch and expressing how he wished I would die. He said he hated everyone we went to school with and fantasized about how he would kill me for all the pain I caused him. I was genuinely afraid but didn't know how to handle the situation. Was it really a death threat? I didn't know. I later learned that Noah worked at a diner down the street from my apartment, and I avoided it at all costs. I've since moved and haven't heard from Noah since. However, multiple girls I went to high school with told me that he was obsessed with me. They said he would constantly talk about me and message them the same disgusting things while he was on a drunken binge. I've been dating my girlfriend for 3 years now. I'll nickname her Linda. It started innocently enough that I commented on one of her Instagram stories and we started chatting from there. Eventually, I got her number and then Snapchat, and after a week we met in person. We started hanging out right after the holidays in January, and the thought of Valentine's Day was already coming up. It was nice having started talking to a girl around that time so that I wouldn't feel the dread of being alone on that annoying holiday. But as Valentine's Day approached and Linda and I were a few dates in, she confided in me about a stalker situation she'd been dealing with. The man's name is Don, and he's a guy a few years older than Linda who happened to go to the same commuter college as her. He met her in class for a group project and followed her around campus a few times. She never involved police or anything, shockingly, hearing that this guy found out where she lived and sent her a bunch of creepy texts which she ignored. She said she never blocked the number because she wanted to see how far he would go without getting the hint. When I gauged why she was choosing now to bring this to my attention, she said because he started reaching out to her again, specifically for Valentine's Day. As you can see here, he started ramping up the texting again as Valentine's Day approached. She continued to just ignore it and let the texts pile up, but he brought it to the next level when he left a box of Russell Stover chocolates on her doorstep. She knew it was from him because he texted her, "I hope you liked the gift I left you." This was when she decided to put an end to it and replied to him a long message, which I won't share for her privacy, but in short, she said he needs help and that she's seeing someone now, so to leave her alone. There are a number of ways to get someone's address these days, but she was scared that he got it by following her home one day. I did my best to make sure that she knew I wouldn't let him do anything to her. Well, fast forward maybe a few days, and Linda sent me a concerning screenshot. It was a screenshot of some text from a fake number asking if the guy she was seeing was me. Me as in he wrote my name. Now I felt involved, and that made me feel moderately uncomfortable. To this point, all I'd heard of this guy was that he was a very creepy and overly persistent texter and potentially followed the girl I'm seeing home to her house, and now he's texting her on fake numbers bringing up my name. It was reaching the point where Linda was close to calling the police if this didn't stop. I told her I'd go to the police station with her if he reached out one more time. Fast forward to Valentine's Day. It was on a Friday this year. Linda and I went out to eat at a nice restaurant that sat on the water. We were at an outside table because the weather was nice. As we ate, we both took notice of a guy sitting on a bench outside of the dining area by the parking lot with a hat conspicuously pulled down over his face as if he were hiding. Linda made a joke, "What if that's Don?" We laughed, but then he slightly tilted his head in our direction as we were looking at him, and then he quickly looked away. Seconds later, he got up and walked away. We weren't laughing anymore. Now we actually questioned the chances of that actually being him, but after a few minutes, the conversation shifted to something else and we enjoyed the rest of our time there. Afterwards, we wanted to keep hanging out. It was Valentine's Day after all, but her parents were home. I had the place to myself, so we went together back to my rental house. We were on the couch and things were getting a bit more intimate. That's when Linda pulled away from me and said, "What was that?" I heard it too, something from outside in the backyard. "Want me to go check?" I asked. She nodded her head. I went out to the backyard patio expecting to hear some animals scurrying off in reaction to my presence. I slipped on my slides and walked around the yard looking around for anything that could have fallen over. I found what made the noise. The entire stack of beach chairs that was leaning on the house had been knocked over. I don't know how that would happen unless someone or something bumped into them. There wasn't even the slightest breeze that night. I looked around at the bushes that encompassed our yard and then, as if my brain immediately could spot something out of place, I locked my vision on something tall in the bushes. My neck jutted forward as I literally tried to focus in and get a better look at what I was looking at. I stepped forward a few steps. I had an moment when I realized it was someone standing in the bushes. He had seen me notice him by this point. I said, "Who is that?" The guy started quickly coming out from the bushes at a quick enough speed that I took it as a threat, as if he were about to charge at me. I took the chance to get him on the ground when he was still struggling with the bushes and twigs, and I yelled at him to stay down multiple times. I yelled Linda's name until she came outside and I said, "Call the police." The guy on the ground struggled and tried to get loose a few times, but I more or less had him in a steady hold. When Linda came outside while talking with the police, I asked her if this was the guy. She gasped and said, "Oh my God, yes." It was the Don guy who had been harassing her. What's worse is at that moment I realized he was wearing the same colored shirt that the guy with the cap from earlier at the restaurant was wearing. Police got to the house and put him in cuffs. He would be charged with trespassing, and taking advantage of the moment, Linda showed the officers all of the harassing and obsessive messages she'd been receiving from him. Since he was already being arrested, Linda pressed charges for stalking and harassment, which the guy ultimately ended up paying a fine for and getting a misdemeanor. Linda got an order of protection against him, and now if he ever contacts her again, he'll be arrested again. Don was the ultimate creep. Thank God he's at least halfway smart enough to not have contacted her again. Though this happened 4 years ago. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.